I'm going to be doing a series about the Indian Act, since so many people seem to be uninformed. So everything I'm going to be drawing from is going to be from this book, 21 Things That You May Not Know About the Indian Act. We're just going to start chapter 1. The very idea of politics was pushed onto Indigenous people. They used to have ways that they used to rule their land. A lot of Indigenous bands were matriarchal, meaning that they highly valued women. They were included in all parts of their life and the way that they ran things. European settlers landed here, would not speak to them, would not deal with women, and pushed them out. And then also introduced an election process on all reserves, all bands, that doesn't really follow with the way that they governed themselves. And these elections first started out, they were supposed to be every year, then they moved it to 3 years, then they moved it back to 2 years, which makes it really, really hard to get anything done. And not only that, but what they were actually allowed to do on reserve land was very limited. So the chief's decision-making powers were reduced to the care of the public health, observance of order and decorum at assemblies of the Indians in general council or on other occasions, the repression of impertinence, the prevention of trespass by cattle, maintaining of roads, bridges, ditches, and fences, the construction and repair of schoolhouses, council houses, and other Indian public buildings, the establishment of pounds and the appointment of pound keepers, money, the locating of the land in the reserves, and the establishment of a register of such locations. So the goal of even Indian status was to dwindle down the amount of Indigenous people. In 1876, Indian was considered someone who was male, that reported to a band, any child of said person, and any woman who was married to him. That changed in 1951 to a person pursuant to the act is registered as an Indian. Ironically enough, the Department of Indian Affairs held the power to depose a chief. And until 1951, only males over 23 could vote in a chief. Between 1958 and 1968, 100,000 women and children lost their status because of them trying to make people lose their status. It wasn't until 1985 that Bill C-31 removed discrimination against women. It didn't really. It's actually, the way that status works is there's so many generations that you can claim you're an Indigenous status person, and they give one more generation to the men than they do the women. Also, the allotment given of land was very different between all the treaties. So in treaties 1 and 2, they used a ratio of 160 acres per family of 5. In treaties 3 to 11, 640 acres per family of 5. And in BC, 20 acres per family of 5. Not only that, but you didn't really get to choose where your land was, where a reserve was. The Crown did that, and the houses were owned by the federal government. Status Indians were not considered people until 1951. Before 1951, in order to be considered a person, the Indian Act defined a person as an individual other than an Indian. To be considered a person, you had to give up your status, known as voluntary enfranchisement. Men over 21 deemed sober and industrious could apply for enfranchisement if qualified. They'd get an allotment of land carved from their home reserve. After 3 years, they would receive the title to the land. If he died without heirs, it would now be considered crown land. See how they were trying to take away reservation land? If he was married, the wife and children would become enfranchised, which means they would lose their status. If he died, and his kids were under 21, they became wards of the government. The government considered this a privilege, but only one man ever took them up on the offer, and that was called the Gradual Civilization Act. Notice how you can become civilized if you give up the fact that you're Indigenous. In 1880, an amendment to the Indian Act required compulsory enfranchisement, for anyone who obtained a degree or became a clergyman. So if you went to university, you were no longer considered an Indigenous person. In 1920, they amended it, or compulsory enfranchisement. They repealed it 2 later, reintroduced it, modified it in 1933 until 1951. So a board would decide at 21 if you would become a civilized person. And if they decided yes, 2 years later, you would lose your status. Then they added the mandatory enfranchisement of women who were married to non-Indian men. So if you married someone who wasn't Indigenous, you were no longer considered Indigenous. And funny enough, Indigenous men who went to go fight in World War II, when they got back, they were informed that because they joined the military, they lost their status. This is part 1. Follow for part 2. I'm going to make this into a nice little thing so we can all learn together, since all the worthless people seem to be in these comment sections.